I mentioned biggest earners, didn't I? Well, in that theme, senior reporters, Rob Dorset, Tim Thornton.
No need for that.
All right, we're going to talk Marcus Rashford then. There was news about interest for him yesterday. Tim, any developments today?
Big developments potentially, because our colleagues at Sky in Germany are reporting that he is an option that Borussia Dortmund are considering, a forward option for them this month. Now, Juventus are also interested in signing him. There is a little bit of symmetry here, isn't there, with the situation with Jadon Sancho. Last year, Manchester United, he was out of favour. He needed to move to get game time. Dortmund was a good home for him. It worked out for all parties. It was a win-win situation. Worked out for all parties. This could be slight because the wages could be a stumbling block. And I think ideally Manchester United would like this to be a permanent move, but if Dortmund were to sign him, it will be on loan. But there's also interest from Italy. Juventus are considering from him, and we reported that there are internal discussions taking place at AC Milan, that there are internal over whether he target for them. Of course, they won the Super Cup yesterday with Tammy Abraham on target for them. So, yeah, it is beginning to ramp up a little bit. Still very much early days in this transfer window, but interest in Marcus Rashford. OK, so interest in Marcus Rashford, says Tim. If he were to move, explain why that would be good news for Aston Villa.
Well, it could be very good news for Aston Villa. Now, we ought to stress, Mark, this isn't dependent on Marcus Rashford going to Dortmund, but we know that Aston Villa are in for Daniel Marlon, who, of course, is a forward at Borussia Dortmund. And if Dortmund were to allow him to go, they would want a replacement. So if Rashford is moving to Dortmund, that makes that move for Aston Villa that much easier. From what we're hearing, though, still quite a big gap in terms of price and valuation from what Villa are prepared to pay and what Dortmund are expecting for him. Villa's most recent offer was about £15 million, 18 million euros. It sounds like Dortmund want at least £25 million, more in the way of 30 million euros. So, stumbling block there, but we're early in the window. Can the two clubs come together at a fee in the middle at somewhere soon in between that? In terms of Rashford, by the way, can't see Man United letting him go on loan. What's in it for them, especially if they'd have to pay a big chunk of his wages? A lot of complicated issues there between Manchester United, Dortmund and Aston Villa.
Well, the only thing, if he goes on loan, is that he plays well, his price
his
goes
transfer
up.
value for the summer, potentially.
Exactly. That's the only thing. Darmesh has told me that time and time again, so I've got it. Right, let's talk Casemiro then. We began the show saying he is happy to get out of Manchester United. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, this is one that the Times are reporting, that he's willing to leave Manchester United in this transfer window. Now, we've been reporting that there is interest from Saudi clubs in Casemiro, but of course, if he were to leave in this window, it would be a massive boost for Manchester United, given the fact that he's one of the highest earners at the club. United, of course, are in this sell-to-buy position, so every pound counts as far as they're concerned. And we've seen that in lots of different ways over the course of the last few months. So it could be a huge boost for United. Still very early days, no deal done as yet, but maybe an indication that he could be prepared to move on.
And Mike, while we're talking about Manchester United midfielders, let me just bring in Kobbie Mainoo here. No suggestion that he's going to leave, but we've seen the impact he's made. Gary Neville talking very highly of him when he's come on for Casemiro in that very disappointing defeat to Newcastle for Manchester United. Kobbie Mainoo, only 2.5 years left on his contract. Noises that maybe other clubs are interested. Of course they're interested in Kobbie Mainoo, the young talent that he is. But might there be an extension to his existing contract at Old Trafford? I think that's one worth watching over the next few weeks.
Welcome back to Transfer Talk. Now, there could be several players set to leave Manchester United this month. One of those could be Antony, and he may be heading to Greece. Delighted to welcome Greek football journalist Kostas Lianos to the show. Thanks very much for joining us, Kostas. Really appreciate it. What is your information regarding Antony, please?
Well, thank you for having me, of course, as always. As Darmesh exclusively revealed for Sky Sports yesterday, there is interest in Manchester United player Antony from teams in Spain and Greece. And I can confirm that the Greek club is indeed Olympiakos. Now, the team have denied interest in Antony, but my sources who are extremely close to the situation insist there is indeed interest in Antony in January. Olympiakos are interested in a loan deal. What I'm hearing is Olympiakos are willing to offer 1.5 to 2 million euros as a loan fee for the next 6 months, with an option to buy at around 18 million euros. So a total package of 20 million euros. Now, we could see Olympiakos being able to afford the loan fee, but when it comes to the buyout clause, that's not the kind of money Olympiakos spend. They haven't done so for a very long time. Now, Antony's agent spoke to my esteemed colleague Johnny Georgopoulos yesterday, and he did say that a move to Olympiakos right now would be difficult, and a deal for Antony right now seems unlikely. Now, let's not forget there's interest from other teams as well. This is going to be a very busy January transfer window for Olympiakos, who want to sign a top name at the wings. Olympiakos have been lacking in attack this season compared to last term, when they lost two important players in longtime captain Kostas Fortounis and former Wolves player Daniel Podence, who are among the most important players that led Olympiakos to their historic Europa Conference League triumph in Athens.
No secret, is it, that he has struggled for form since joining Man United? Is there a feeling, though, that he can return to that form that he showed at Ajax?
Well, I mean, since 2013, we've seen a lot of star players coming in for a lot of money at Man United and struggling, such as Paul Pogba, Angel Di Maria, Alexis Sanchez, and now Antony. Of course, Olympiakos is the kind of club that would be able to give a player like Antony different opportunities. Greek football loves a dribbler. They love an entertainer. But of course, Olympiakos, I expect them to be a lot more careful in this January window, as they have seen quite a lot of big names coming in for big money and failing to live up to expectations. Most recently, Willian, who came in as a free agent in September and only lasted for 3 months. And before him, the likes of Sime Vrsaliko, Marcelo, James Rodriguez. Olympiakos can be quite the second chance saloon, but the expectations would still be very high for any player like Antony, any player of that kind of caliber. They would expect the player to deliver, to be a leader, and to impress on the pitch. Olympiakos would be a different kind of opportunity compared to Manchester United and what we've seen in the last few years. But demands from the club, from the team, from the manager, José Luis Mendilibar, and the fans would be extremely high. Nevertheless, Olympiakos are looking for a top name at the wings. This is going to be a very busy January for Olympiakos, I expect.
OK, you mentioned top names there. Who else are Olympiakos interested in signing from the Premier League?
Well, another player that is being mentioned a lot here in Greece is Newcastle's Miguel Almiron. What we've been hearing since last summer is that Newcastle, who are keen on a deal for Almiron, were asking for £10 million, which, again, this is not the kind of money Olympiakos usually spend. But now we're hearing it has dropped to £5 million, which is a lot closer to Olympiakos' standards. But of course, there is intense competition for Almiron from the MLS in Charlotte, as well as Brazil in Sao Paulo, Botafogo, and Santos. Again, Olympiakos looking for a major addition in the wings this January, as they have high hopes, high standards. This is their 100-year anniversary, and Olympiakos' among the real goals is to win the Europa League after winning the Conference League last season. And another name we're hearing a lot of is at left back that Olympiakos really need to add into, and that is Sergio Reguilón from Tottenham, which is a much more doable situation because his contract at Tottenham runs out in June, and he has the same agent as Willian, who is very close to Olympiakos and the Marinakis and Vangelis Marinakis. And that is why Willian's exit from Olympiakos was so smooth, without any drama or financial issues.
Excellent talking to you, Kostas. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Just before we get to Antony, Dan, I just want to touch on something that David Ornstein of The Athletic has reported, and that is that Borussia Dortmund are amongst the clubs that are interested in Marcus Rashford, particularly in a loan deal. Do you think that would be a good deal for Rashford?
It'd be very interesting, wouldn't it? And first of all, these two clubs have a bit of a history in the last decade or so for doing business together. Manchester United have bought the likes of Shinji Kagawa, Henrik Mkhitaryan in the past, and Borussia Dortmund have also looked the other way in terms of interest in players. We saw what they were able to do with Jadon Sancho, having a return for him last season on loan. And it does make sense if you're Borussia Dortmund, because if they do lose someone like Daniel Marlin, who's been linked with Aston Villa in particular, then they'll need a winger. They play a 4-1, kind of two behind a striker type formation. And actually, if you add Marcus Rashford into that three behind the striker with the likes of Julian Brand, Karim Adeyemi, Jamie Gittins as well, that would be a really exciting, pacey front three behind the striker. So it would be exciting. I also think if you're Marcus Rashford, he's thinking undoubtedly, how can I also, first of all, get back to playing football, but also there's a New England manager in Thomas Tuchel. Where can I play that guarantees me a bit of limelight, a bit of a showcase to get myself back into that squad? I think Borussia Dortmund would be the place, or a place, where you could potentially do that.
Yeah, good point with the German manager as well. He might appreciate going to a big German club. Let's talk about Antony, though. We heard there from Kostas, interesting news that Olympiakos very much interested in him. Is Antony one of the few players, when you hear the numbers there, so Kostas saying that it might be a loan with an option to buy, something around about 18 million euros. Does that show you that Antony, despite his struggles, is still one of the few Manchester United players that they can actually get some decent money for if they want to move them on?
Yeah, you look at Manchester United, you survey their squad, there's only a few sellable assets. You look at Marcus Rashford, who we've touched on, look at Antony, because of the age, despite the fact that he was so expensive, you're not going to recoup half the amount of money that you pay for him, but he still is a sellable asset. Look at Casemiro, maybe he's got 18 months left in his contract, and Xerxes, there's been links to a move back to Italy. But then the other players who maybe are surplus to requirements at Old Trafford are older and they've got 6 months left on the contract. Look at Ericsson, you look at Lindelof, you look at Johnny Evans. They're not really sellable assets, so it's imperative for them to get some money for Antony if he is to leave in January. It was interesting though, Costa said an option, not an obligation.
Yeah.
And so that's very, very important. We don't know how Antony's going to perform. He said that they love a dribbler in Greece, but we don't know if Antony is of that level. Olympiakos are still a huge club. And so the fact that it's only an option may deter Manchester United, because they need to make sure they get guaranteed money for Antony, because like I said, he's one of the few sellable assets.
Yes, but they could take a risk, obviously, and just hope that he does well, and then obviously his value then retains or even goes up slightly. What about Victor Gyökeres? Because we are hearing that he is told Sporting that he will stay in January, but he wants to go in the summer to a top club. Do you think Manchester United will go in for him in the summer?
I think when you bear in mind the links with the manager and how well he's done under that manager previously, it's clear that Manchester United do need a little bit of a revamp up front. They look toothless at times and haven't got that proven marksman, and he is now at the top level, the proven marksman. I think a lot of Premier League clubs, a lot of big European clubs will be kicking themselves that they didn't go in for him when he left Coventry, because look at the price he's going to go for now. It's going to be over double, isn't it, if he leaves? So obviously, for Sporting, it's great that he's going to stay and see out the season. I don't think he was ever going to leave them in January, but that will be one that not just Manchester United, a host of big European clubs will be looking at in the summer.
Yeah, agreed. There could be a few after.
## Kobbie Mainoo's uncertainty at Manchester United amid Chelsea links. The future of Kobbie Mainoo at Manchester United has suddenly become uncertain, with speculation swirling that Chelsea might make a bid for the talented midfielder. Mainoo, 19, is reportedly unhappy with the initial contract terms offered by United, which adds to the confusion surrounding his future. Currently under contract with the Red Devils until 2027, with an option for an additional year, Mainoo's impressive performances have caught the eye of other clubs, particularly Chelsea. United sources maintain that they have no intention of letting him go. Alongside Alejandro Garnacho, Rasmus Højlund, and Andre Onana, Mainoo was identified as one of the few players deemed not for sale this summer. However, each of them has faced challenges this season, and Mainoo himself struggled with an 8-week layoff due to a hamstring injury in October and November. He has started in just 5 of the 12 matches under manager Ruben Amorim. Despite these setbacks, Mainoo showcased his potential in a standout performance during the 2-2 draw against Liverpool at Anfield. Yet, the club's ongoing difficulties in meeting the Premier League's profitability and sustainability rules may force them to consider selling off some of their academy talent. Academy players are often seen as pure profit, and the Premier League's profitability and sustainability regulations influenced United's decision to part ways with Scott McTominay to Napoli in August. The club has also collected fees from the sales of Mason Greenwood, Willy Cambuala, Hannibal Mejbri, Alvaro Fernandez, and Will Fish. Former United sporting director Dan Ashworth stated in September that the era of the one-club player is effectively over. "I've seen this written before, I'm not saying anything new." The number of players who will remain at a single club for an extended period is likely changing as a consequence of these rules and regulations. Mainoo signed his current contract in February 2023, at just 17 years old. Since then, he has solidified his place in the United lineup with a series of standout performances, including scoring the winning goal in the FA Cup final against Manchester City and contributing to England's run to the European Championship final, where he was a starter. Represented by Stellar Agency, Mainoo also renewed his sponsorship deal with Nike in August. With Chelsea's increasing interest, the pressure is on Manchester United to respond. If the club fails to address Mainoo's concerns or improve their contract offer, they risk losing not just a valuable player, but also the faith of their fanbase and their commitment to nurturing homegrown talent. Should Mainoo decide to move to Chelsea, it would not only mark a significant blow to United's plans, but also reinforce the narrative that young stars are increasingly seeking greener pastures elsewhere. Fans and analysts alike will be closely monitoring how the club handles this delicate situation, as it could set a precedent for how United approaches contract negotiations with its burgeoning talent in the future. The stakes are high, and with every passing day, the uncertainty surrounding Mainoo's future continues to grow, keeping both clubs and supporters on edge.